Okay, glad to have you back. If you're just joining us, you're watching Morning Delight right here on Lagos Television. We've got a guest in the studio. He's a lawyer and, of course, a political analyst, Mr. Bosun Oshifowora. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Good morning. Nice
We'll
to
be
be
looking
here.
at over 2 decades of developmental governance in Lagos. In other words, it's been 20 years of governance in Lagos. Pretty evident if you're a resident of Lagos. Okay, I was listening to this, the same stations before we came on there, the same station, somebody said, why will President Buhari or why will the federal government concentrate development in Abuja and Lagos? And I'm wondering, like, I don't get it. It said everything that is good about Nigeria seems to be happening in Abuja and Lagos. That's why people are flocking there. And I'm wondering, like, how about people, the governance in those states are they're strategic about their developmental agenda, and they're pursuing that chronologically and strategically, as against just any guy comes and like the kind of football we used to play in those days, anywhere belle face. You know, like I said, isn't that what's happening? Because I'm sure if you're in Lagos, you've heard about developmental. It's in the master plan. So I've not seen the master. Okay, I've seen the master plan before. It got a snippet of exactly what it entails to build Lagos and the futuristic goals of the state. But I'm wondering, like, it's as if one administration after the other decided to just develop Lagos. If my predecessors stop here, I will continue from here and move on. It's as simple. That's my own layman's term. So let's bring you in now. 2 decades of developmental strides in Lagos. I'm sure we've talked about the personnel, we've talked about, but if you look at Lagos, what is the most significant thing that strikes you as a state that is progressive? I've got an idea in my head. I'm not going to let that out yet. But what makes Lagos that center of excellence? What is it for you?
All right. Let me pick it from the point you raised earlier, that other states are not strategic enough. I remember in the mid-90s, I was in a tertiary institution in Ogun State, and I remember them having a crusade and praying that investment should come to Ogun State. Don't laugh. Now, whichever way, I think that thing worked. Whether it was now the prayers that opened the brains of the people there, because, I mean, the argument then was Oyo State and Lagos were stifling Ogun State because Ogun was in the middle. But if you look at what has happened in Ogun State in the past couple of years, you find that a lot of industries actually moved there. And Ogun State is no longer what it used to be. So I think, like you said, they have to employ some level of strategic thinking. It's unfortunate that we have people in leadership position, particularly at the state level, who don't think, permit that expression, because you find that there's so many things available, but I think since the advent of these funds that comes from federal government to states, I think people just shut down thinking. And because if there was no money coming, of course you would think. But I think since that started, people just stopped thinking, and most states just don't have anything to offer. So at the end of the day, you just find out that, okay, at the end of the month, they'll give us something, we'll pay salaries, whatever is left, we'll share and go. And it's quite unfortunate. That's the sad tale you have with almost all the states. But you find out that the only exceptions seem to be maybe Lagos. Well, Abuja is under some kind of federal benevolence. So that's why you find massive development. Then maybe Port Harcourt. But you find just a few thinking leaders in position, and that's what you see in those places. So back to Lagos, and what has made Lagos an outstanding place, comparatively speaking, is the fact that, one, historically, Lagos used to be the center of the center, like the center of the country. So I think that federal presence also helped Lagos with respect to development. That's one. Then, they also claim that they're the first to see white people. So I think that kind of rubbed
I
off
thought
on them.
Calabar also was a capital at one point in time.
Let's leave that for now. And let's just focus on Lagos. You know, I told you about how leadership impacts things, development. So I think Lagos has been fortunate to have good people in leadership, even historically speaking, and up to the present time. Now, so that's one. Then if you want to talk about developmental governance in Lagos, we have to look at two angles. Number one, we'll look at the tangible and the intangible part of development. The tangible part of development are the things we can see. I mean, we just saw the seaports, you know, refineries coming up, a lot of structures coming up. Those are the things you can see, you can touch. The intangible part are the enabling factors that actually make development possible. Recently, I read something about, I think it's Canada, where they said that foreigners can't, you know, buy homes or, you know, like that. There's some level of restriction. And you see, that's them. In Lagos, anybody can come from anywhere, buy anything, develop anything, and become whatever he wants to become. Those are the intangible part of development that actually makes Lagos attractive to people. If you look at judiciary, for example, I think from the point where the presidential flag bearer of APC, Ahmed Bola Tinubu came in, one of the areas where he actually learned strength was judiciary. He actually reformed the judiciary to the point that almost all the states actually, I mean, Lagos has been the flagship, and you know, people come to learn a lot of things. We've learned, I mean, we've seen how states came to learn how Lagos was generating funds, you know, internally generated revenue. The same for judiciary. That one, I mean, because it's my constituency, I'm very aware of how other states actually came to understudy Lagos. Now, if you have a viable judiciary and rule of law, and law, justice is dispensed the way it should be, you can rest assured that the society will thrive. So those are the intangible parts. There are certain policies that are in place. There's no restriction as to, if Joshua makes billions tomorrow now, he can just decide, he can decide to go into something. And you know, you have laws that will enable you. Those are the things that I feel made Lagos, beyond the physical structures that we've seen. There are a few things, intangible things that were put in place by the leadership, particularly in this in present history of Lagos, that has made Lagos very attractive. Because you find that I was on the platform yesterday and people were talking, they're like, okay, if the other candidates you were saying actually developed the place, why are we not trooping there? All of you are here in Lagos. You know, like that. And now you're telling us that this person can turn, you know, water to wine and everything.
But let's look at let's focus a bit on those enabling parts, those intangible parts. The bulk of the projects we see now being inaugurated, projects that's not single-handedly done or executed solely by the state government. They've had to get the buy-ins of the private sector, which right from beginning, over 23 years now, since democracy also returned to Lagos State, has been the norm. The relationship between the private sector and, of course, the state government. And every year, it seems that it builds and it builds. So much so, there is a lot of the trust the private sector have for the state government. They're real. They're things that are responsible for the bulk of the development that we see. And so I'm going to ask the question about other states. What will it take to get that kind of trust, say, from the private sector, for example?
Particularly, I think, is leadership and vision. I think a couple of days ago we were here talking about, you know, leadership and vision and how Lagos has been blessed, you know, with people who have that understanding. I think it's a question of vision, because I remember I saw something yesterday in the news, and it was a post about 2006, May 2006, where Ashwaju was talking about the same seaports and, you know, all those things. I can tell you, I don't know how much I can let out, but I can say this with all sense of responsibility. I used to be a legislative aide to a senator back in the day, sometime around 2007. And I remember there was some, maybe symposium, Ashwaju was there. And that was where I saw the whole BRT layout. There was no BRT there.
That was when he talked about vision.
I saw that. We found it was, the thing was in his house, because we used to go to his house then. And, you know, I saw it. And later, so some of those things, we're now seeing them coming to fruition. I think it has to do with leadership. It has to do with vision. And, you know, I don't want to go spiritual, biblical, but, you know, they say the things that be not. No, the things that you now see were made from things that were not seen. Yeah. So the intangible part practically rests on leadership and the vision of the leaders. Because, I mean, we have other states, they've had their own people, but they just couldn't come up with something. We've seen governors come out and give cudgels and shovels and wheelbarrow to, you know, I mean,
but that's also another huge point, because when you, as we were saying yesterday on the show, every year in, year out, we get budgetary allocation, go through the various houses of assemblies, both at the federal and at the state houses of assembly. And I recall every time on the show, even when we say the federal allocation for any sector is below what the United Nations agrees, and we say, look, it is complementary. Your state government is supposed to at least match the federal government up, at least to make a whole. If we cannot get the whole from one part, the subnationals should come together, come up with some ideas. We see that happening in Lagos, but there's still 35 other states who are not doing as much.
It's very sad. It's very sad because that we found ourselves here. And if you take it back in history, you find that when we had regional system of government, Awolowo had the same thing. He built, you know, the Western region from nothing. It's about the power of vision, qualitative leadership, because you find that the schools, the things that are now, were built from the things that were in his brain. And that's basically what is happening in Lagos. It's unfortunate, maybe some brains are not working in all those places. That is definitely obvious that some people are not thinking and they're not working. Because there's no state. I mean, if you go abroad, if you go, US has 52 states. The states have one thing or the other that they are known for. But there are some states that are known for nothing, maybe owing salaries, and that's all. I mean, it's almost unheard of, you know. But I think everything rests on leadership. And if you look at some of the things, Lagos is a very small. If you look at landmass,
it's the smallest.
Lagos is the smallest.
It's the smallest.
So how can the smallest, it's what Yorubas will call a Kenyidegbegmo kind of thing. Somebody who came last or somebody with the smallest portion is now coming out with something that is blowing everybody's mind. So that shows
Mr.
you
Shibora, they're asking you here, they're only developing Lagos and Abuja. I mean, we've talked about this.
Nobody is developing.
Yes,
Lagos is developing Lagos. Everybody is to develop. I just gave example of Ogun State. Though I mean, they're having their own issues now, but I knew I was in the mid-90s. I was in Ogun State. I was not a kid. I was in tertiary institution. So, and it was, Ogun State was dead. But over time, I mean, you saw, if you look at Ota, for example, it's one place that is thriving. Now, it has to do with how to bring in people. Nobody is developing Lagos State. Nobody is going to put hose or anything, rope on anybody's, oh yeah, come and invest in Lagos. No. They have created, that's why we talked about the tangible and the intangible part. Now, they have gone on to look for investors. Why your own governors are dancing and drinking palm wine? Then you think you have the same kind of development. It can't happen now. It's not, life is never fair. But life is not fair. Life is based on what you put in it. Whatever you put in is what is going to come out.
So I heard some broadcast journalist on another TV station, and he was talking about how can Lagos State say it's developed when it doesn't have potable water. We have some people, despite all this we're mentioning, they don't seem to see the strides. Perhaps maybe because of their political affiliation, or they're just. But coincidentally, they are saying all these things from the Lagos that they are criticizing. So I'm wondering, is Lagos developed by virtue of the minds that are in it, a function of even the residents that are enlightened to know that we want more. We've done this, understandable, but there are more things to do. Lagos can do better.
Yeah, I think I'll go by the slogan of the incumbent governor, that it's a rising.
Lagos rising.
Lagos is rising.
Rising sun.
Comparatively speaking, with other states, Lagos is developed. But if you want to look at standard gauge and what obtains, by United Nations standard, Lagos is developing. And I mean, I remember we grew up in this Lagos. I've been around for a few decades, and I remember we used to have tap water. I mean, somebody was still saying last week that only God knows where this typhoid thing came from, because we used to
from the top, just go to any,
and
yes.
As boys,
yes.
we went to all boys school. There were taps that didn't work. You used
your mouth to suck it. Jesus God. I'm ashamed of myself. We will drag until water comes.
Until water comes out,
no.
So, but it's
it.
unfortunate. I think over time, I think some things went down and we didn't have those kind of things again. Now, but as for potable water, yeah, it's a sad development that we lost that part. But also, I think recently I heard Mr. Governor, talking about the fact that they had such challenges with what they had at Iju Water Works, and they've come up with something else that, in a matter of time, that we'll have that same thing we used to have. And then I don't know if our kids now will be able to do like Joshua did.
We actually had a viewer yesterday who sent in a message from Surulere, and he had said, look,
no water.
No water.
No, that's what he does.
And that's your constituency. And he said, growing up in Surulere, they always had what you just described, and he's sad that this day and time, there's still no potable water. And we're just telling him that, look, it will take, it's in the works. It would take a long time, but it will definitely get there.
Yeah, I think there was some collapse at some point. And when democracy came in, there was popular participation. And you cannot say because there's no potable water, things have not developed. And yesterday I was talking, I knew this was going to come up, but I was talking with some people, and I said, one of the things I've seen that in Lagos is there are a lot of links. Somebody, raised something that we don't have all those long bridges. I said, why would you build a bridge where it is not necessary? That one of the things you should appreciate are link bridges that have opened up new places. I can tell you, offhand, a few places that I know that were almost inaccessible. But, a few link bridges here and there.
Connected.
And then one of the things that had happened, development, because in that platform we were talking, somebody said, how does this translate to food on your table? I said, way back, my mom used to stay somewhere behind Jack on the estate, Isolo. Way back, it was not, that place was almost not accessible. But I think during Fashala's tenure, they opened up a bridge. And from that estate to that end where my mom stays, and even beyond, in 3-5 minutes, you're there. Yeah. This was a journey of 2 hours before now. Now, guess what happened? Land appreciated from 400,000. Now the
millions.
Then they come and buy, just buy anything. Now it's in millions. You can't just buy like they used to call you now. So these are some of the things. So you can look at how development has gotten into that place and how it has influenced. Look at how much money. Sometimes I wish I'm a Nomonile. I you understand how. So these are some of the things that this thing does to places like that. So what I'm trying to say is that all these developments open up new places, open up new opportunities for people, and every day you have millionaires coming up in Lagos based on what the government has done. Now, so it's unfortunate that other states are envious of Lagos, but maybe if they
Because I
come,
was going to
think
say
Lagos
that.
should start
I mean,
charging.
we say success. The success has many parents. It also drags along with it a lot of enemies. Because when you see a lot of the comments you get from Nigerians, and that's also where I want to quickly land here. For you, I mean, you're a lawyer, understand the Constitution so well, and you understand the workings of the various arms of government and how they complement one another and where they stand apart, where their strengths are. For Nigerians, as we begin to go towards the elections at the moment, I was thinking, I mean, when you still have comments like, they are only, who are the they? So it does look like Nigerians need some form of education when it comes to holding their government, their state government, accountable to the things that should be deliverables to them, and they are not getting. But they're losing sight of it because they're concerned and focused only on the center.
I think it's lack of understanding, and I think I think the FG needs to actually come out. You know, the government at the center needs to come out and tell them that, exactly.
It's not me.
This is you know. I think during Fasha last time, I remember there were some roads that they were putting that state government is building, but this space actually belongs to federal government. People don't know. They just see everybody. It's an us and them kind of thing. Like they are the ones ruling us. All of them are the same. They don't know the dichotomy between state and federal government and which road belongs. You just want to go on the road and make sure that you get to your house within the shortest possible time, and you don't want to hit any bump or pothole, and that's how people see things. Now, but you see, at the same time, we need to actually make them realize that, say, this belongs to federal, this belongs to state. Majority of the things that we complain about are actually in the hands of the state government. It's the state government that should create an enabling environment for things and development to thrive. I mean, look at the way there was a time Metro Line was supposed to be in Lagos. Then, for whatever reason, the thing didn't come to fruition. Then somebody took it upon himself and said, we will put this thing in place. And if you look at what Mr. Governor has done and what his predecessors, you know, in office have done, I mean, it's a continuum and everybody is working. He's going to leave, some other person is going to come in, and then they just make life easier for the next person. He's not thinking of how to reinvent the wheel. The wheel is already there. So what could we put on the wheel to make sure that Lagos is viable, Lagos is moving? That's what, and I think a lot, I've seen people come out, a lot is owed to Asiwaju, not because of anything. I've seen people come out and say, yes, he claims to develop Lagos. Lagos has always tried. But this man has introduced another dimension to things. You can't take it away from him. He's done fantastically well. He may not be the best thing that happened to Lagos, but he's one of the best things that has happened to Lagos. You can't write off Jakonde. No. You can't write off, you know, what other people have done. But he came in and accelerated change. Because the development we had in the days of Jakonde, we've moved from there. Look at the kind of houses that were built in the days of Jakonde. It was for that period in time. Now we don't build those kind of houses. We have new ones coming in that accommodates our present needs. So that's it. It's like that. The roads back then are not the kind of roads we have now. So it's Lagos is still right.
Can we say perhaps let's borrow them this template? I guess we need to go. Okay, let me just ask this question. Borrow this template. When a governor comes in and said, I'm going to do something, like the governor said, look, I'm going to finish up with the rice mill. I'm going to finish up with the blue line and the red line. I'm going to help with the ports as well. I'm going to start with the 4th Mainland Bridge. I'm going to start with the Lekki Airport. These are the things I want to do. And in his tenure, of course, he's commissioned the Lekki Deep Sea Port in Mota Rice Mill. Those are tangible, like when a candidate come forward and put themselves forward and say they will do, and if they don't, we'll tell them, go back to your house. I think you rule better from your house. Is that what we should do?
That's basically what we should do. But it's unfortunate that people are not. I saw one of the gubernatorial candidates criticizing the blue line, the blue rail. They said it's only 3 stops that's been covered. And I'm like, I'm tempted to say, oh God, what do you want to do? This one has covered 3 stops. I mean, fine.
Where will you take
what
it
do
from?
you have to offer? He hasn't said anything. He's just very critical of what's going on. And I'm like, see, if I'm on the other side, I will tell you this. As for this man has done well. but I
this
can
is
do
what
better.
this is what I'm going to
Yes,
do.
but they're not saying anything. So I think what you said is the best way to go about this thing. Whatever you have said you will do, at the end of your tenure, if you got 5/10, if we feel it's okay, and we feel, okay, the remaining 5, you
can complete it.
You can complete it now, but we see that you started on it, then that for me is the pass mark. Now, unlike somebody just coming and saying, he can't do this, he can't, they've not done this, they've not done that, what can you do? That's what we should be asking now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bosnosh, for joining us this morning. It's always a pleasure when you talk about Lagos. Just saw something there now. Okay, thank you very much. I think we should just take up that responsibility of making our leaders accountable, getting them accountable, especially when they say something. Can we just pen it down and have the soundbite? You said you were going to commission the Immortal Rice Mill. Your tenure is almost up. Where is it? And if he has terrible excuse, they say, excuse me, sir, 4 years. Oh, you get to Paris, sir. But of course, we have excuse, sir. Or better still, they say, we'll do the blue line, and the blue line is not there, or the red line, you can't see visible signs. So I can say, anyway, you don't do something of that nature. Okay, thank you very much, sir, for joining us this morning. Well, Lagos is working, and that's why we're here.
It's rising.
It's rising. That's the situation. We take a break. Do we have sports, guys?
Yes.
Okay, it's time for us to go talk sports. The Australian Open is still on. Watch some over the all night. It's interesting. We'll be right back with sports on the other side of the show.
In a repeat of the 2022 final, SGH Sports Academy